Help, my daughter has become a vegan. Even 3 centuries ago, John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist movement, thought that eating animal foods was harmful to people's health. He felt good physical and spiritual health went together, and a vegetarian diet was the most compatible with Christian values like mercy, compassion, and kindness. He is reported to have said, "I believe in my heart and faith in Jesus Christ can and will lead us beyond an exclusive concern for the well-being of other human beings to the broader concern for the well-being of the birds in our backyards, the fish in our rivers, and every living creature on the face of the earth." In recent years, there has been a rapid growth in people moving towards a vegan diet. Sadly, Christians have not featured prominently in that growth. Yet David Clough, Professor of Theological Ethics at the University of Chester, argues that Christians have strong reasons to reduce or eliminate animal products in their diet. In his book on animals, David Clough comments that in the period of the history of the Christian Church, we have travelled from a time in which the killing of animals was only permitted within religious rituals to a time when 60 billion animals per year are killed for human consumption. 60 billion animals per year for human consumption. The majority of these are raised, slaughtered, and processed in factory conditions, far removed from the sight and concern of their consumers. And in fact, many young people have no idea where their food actually comes from. The massive growth in human population means that competition for room to live between human beings and other creatures is becoming more intense, and it's made far worse by global climate change. The relationships between humans and other animals raises significant ethical questions. So does Scripture have anything to say about what we should eat? Let's start with Genesis 1. Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." Some Christians interpret this to mean that vegetarianism was part of God's original purpose and a plan for both man and animals. Psalm 104 sees God as the provider of food and provision. All creatures look to you to give them their food at the proper time. When you give it to them, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they are satisfied with good things. And David Clough points us to biblical texts for reflection. First, in Genesis 2, there is the harmony between the creatures in the Garden of Eden, and in Genesis 7-8, we hear how this is renewed in the ark. And in Genesis 9, this describes God's covenant with all creatures following the flood. Several of Psalms provide a vision of all flesh coming before God in praise: hills, valleys, seas, floods, sea monsters, wild animals, cattle, creeping things, and birds, joining with human beings to worship. The book of Isaiah gives us a vivid picture of animals and humans together, with no one hurt and nothing destroyed. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear, their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put its hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And Daniel and his friends thrive on a vegetarian diet in the court of Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel is unharmed when Darius condemns him to be thrown to the lions. Paul's vision in Romans of a creation freed from its bondage to decay suggests that the redeemed life of animals must be an escape from the suffering and deterioration they experience in the present time. And Paul's letter to the Colossians and Ephesians proclaims Christ's work in reconciling and making peace between all things in heaven and earth, which suggests that in the new creation all creatures must live in peace with one another. However, these passages should be balanced against passages such as Genesis 9:3 and Romans 14:2-6. In Genesis, God speaks to Noah. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. And Paul writes in Romans, one person's faith allows them to eat anything, but another whose faith is weak eats only vegetables. The one who eats everything must not treat with contempt the one who does not, and the one who does not eat everything must not judge the one who does, for God has accepted them. Who are you to judge someone else's servant? To their own master servants stand or fall, and they will stand, for the Lord is able to make them stand. One person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eats meat does so to the Lord, for they give thanks to God, and whoever abstains does so to the Lord and give thanks to God. Might we consider this passage a shift away from the Old Testament legalism and strict food laws, and a move towards Christian liberty and individual conscience? What we eat and from where we source our food becomes an ethical issue, and for each individual to decide. But Christians might wish to consider the following. Christians might move towards a vegan diet in order to care for the environment which God created. The huge increase in raising livestock to feed an ever-increasing population has contributed to the greenhouse gas emissions, which are catastrophic to the climate. Climate change has a devastating impact on humans and other animals. Christians might become vegan in order to enable fellow creatures to flourish. The vast majority of farmed animals are raised in industrial systems that subject them to unnecessary suffering and impoverished lives, in which they cannot thrive and glorify God. The biomass of domestic chickens alone is nearly 3 times that of all wild birds, and the biomass of domesticated animals is 24 times that of all wild land mammals. A shocking example that humans are monopolising the capacity of the earth to produce food in such a way that leaves very little space for wild animals, which is driving their mass extinction. Christians might shift to a vegan diet in order to save the lives of fellow human creatures. The livestock industry threatens human food and water security, and those already suffering from deprivation are at greatest risk. Christians are explicitly directed to care for those with the greatest needs and least resources, and animal agriculture requires significant volumes of water. And Christians might adopt a vegan diet in order to sustain the health and well-being of their families and wider society. The high levels of meat and other animal products consumed in developed nations directly damages human health, resulting in increased incidences of heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes and stroke. In addition, intensive farming practices contribute to both the rise of antibiotic resistance and the risk of pandemics such as swine and bird flu, a very topical issue with the presence of COVID-19 pandemic. But in summary, Richard Bauckham asks us to reflect on the fact that dominion is granted by God in the creation account and presupposes that humans bear the divine image and should reflect God's own rule over his creation. Dominion over other living creatures does not define a purpose or extent. In the context of Genesis 1, there is no indication that killing animals for food is intended or acceptable. By implication, both humans and animals are vegetarian. But surely human dominion, like God's, is a matter not of use, but of care. All species make use of their respective environments, and in agriculture, humans are extending the right of all animals and living from the land. The dominion God gives them over fellow creatures should reflect God's rule, with the intention of being exercised within the created order that God has established. Humankind must serve that order for all species to flourish, and they must take responsibility for protecting creation following God's example. It is this final principle of living within God's created order that really questions the extensive farming methods we use today. Whether we eat a vegan diet or eat meat is a personal choice, but as Christians we have a responsibility to protect the environment of which we are a part, and we must at all cost reduce the suffering of other creatures, whether that be human or animal. Thank you.